Hi, this is Courtney Coward, and today I'm going to be speaking to you about Bring Your Own Device and how it's transitioned into solutions such as disaster recovery as a service, which I feel is a product of the evolution of the mobile device management function. So firstly, the Bring Your Own Device movement was developed out of the desire to reduce material costs while increasing employee morale for organizations. The great thing about this was that we're saving money and we're making our people happier, but we're also exposing ourselves to a lot of security risks. As this became more known, the mobile device management was developed in an effort to address these security concerns. Over time, mobile device management has also evolved, and we see things such as disaster recovery as a service coming into play. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about a scenario in which mobile device management might have an impact upon your business operations. As we all know, the Samsung Galaxy Note 7 was recalled earlier this year because it was spontaneously lighting on fire due to an overheating battery issue. We've gotten to the point now where any remaining Samsung Galaxy Note 7s aren't even allowed on FAA flights because of the danger associated with them. But let's think about this in an organizational context. Let's pretend there's an organization where you have 10,000 employees. Upon hire, each of these 10,000 employees is given a Samsung Galaxy Note 7. On this device, they do all of their work. They check their email, they access the internet, they talk to clients, etc., etc. Unfortunately, the Galaxy Note 7 is recalled. So what's going to happen? Basically, nobody has a phone. They're cut off from their corporate data, and they're essentially handicapped until the solution is kind of come to. Unfortunately, the solution comes with the organization having to purchase or, get at least 10,000 new phones, have them sent to headquarters, and then devoting their entire IT department to getting these phones up and running for each individual employee, who unfortunately also had, different applications, different setups, etc., etc. So basically, this is an extremely cumbersome process. And unfortunately, it's also going to cost the organization, both time and money. Now let's think about this, but let's pretend that a different organization has 10,000 employees and they use mobile device management solutions. Employees have smartphones of their choosing. While there are a number of Samsung Galaxy Note 7s because it's a very popular phone, there's also iPhones, there's also other varieties of phones, including Nokias, Blackberries, what have you. So when this recall happens, only a portion of the workforce has been impacted. And what's really great about mobile device management is that when each of these affected employees gets a new phone from Samsung, the centralized image of what was needed for work on that phone can be easily retrieved by the IT department and quickly downloaded to the new phone. Basically, each employee simply has to log into the company's MDM provider, and business continuing information is pretty promptly downloaded to the new device. Within a matter of days instead of weeks or months, business as usual can continue. Now, obviously, this is a bit hyperbolic in nature, but I do think it's a good kind of scenario to think about where we're going to see, the biggest bang for our buck with mobile device management. So the first thing we need to understand is the Bring Your Own Device movement and how it came about. So when cell phones first became popular, I think we all remember the very cumbersome ones, back on Saved by the Bell, and Zach Morris had the phone that was the size of a brick. When we think about that phone, I think we're pretty sure it didn't access the internet. Pretty sure Zach Morris wasn't checking his email, and I'm pretty sure he wasn't accessing corporate data. However, the rise of smartphones kind of necessitated the BYOD movement. Employees want to bring their own devices that they're familiar with and like and enjoy, and they want to use them for work. And what organizations saw is, okay, so we let our employees use their own devices and we're saving money on hardware. We're not having to buy this stuff. And furthermore, we're not having to use our IT department to support them. What's really cool is one of the first huge organizations to adopt the BYOD movement is actually Intel in 2008. Intel actually reported that with the introduction of the utilization of BYOD in their operations, each of their employees was essentially gaining an hour of productivity per day. As a whole, this created over 5 million, Yep, 5 million more productive hours every year. So it's really cool at this point. Employees can access a myriad of data from their mobile devices. We've got some research in here that's saying 70% of employees would be conducting work on their mobile phones by the year 2016, which I think has definitely happened. And they're saying that more than 1 billion mobile devices will be used in Bring Your Own Device programs by just next year. Now, as I mentioned, Bring Your Own Device actually increases employee morale, and this is actually supported in research. Employees can select their own devices that they like, enjoy, and want to use, and they also have a more flexible work environment. So let's say I need to work from home because my kid's sick. That actually helps me from a morale standpoint because I have flexibility in my job. Also, I can work on the train on the way to work, work at a stoplight, though not while driving. So just what we're seeing is a bit more adjustiveness, if you will, kind of in our work contexts. And again, as mentioned, Intel reported an increase of an hour of productive time per employee per day. Now, as mentioned, the Bring Your Own Device movement did come with kind of a panel of security risks as well. One of the kind of most obvious of these is the unintentional movement and distribution of information. I can access SharePoint and get any of our confidential company information at any point from anywhere at this point. Nearly 96% of public transportation users report using unsecured Wi-Fi on that transportation for work-related tasks. There's also the awful kind of mistake of accidentally sharing data via Dropbox or cloud-based services, and as we'll get into in a minute, even accidentally uploading something to Facebook or Twitter that is really kind of private for your organization. Theft and stolen devices, lost devices, it's really another big issue. This can expose organizations to data breaches, including loss of trade secrets, loss of employee information, and also of client information. Cell phones are a target for theft, and they're also tiny, and we lose them all the time. And sadly, 70 million cell phones or cellular devices are lost every year, and only 7% of those are generally recovered. Malware and viruses are another concern associated with the Bring Your Own Device movement. The end user really, unfortunately, we're all human, and we might unintentionally download some application on our personal phone that has malicious intent. But since our phone is also used for organizational information, we might have really opened up our organization to some threats associated with viruses. And as we've seen kind of the growth of the Android market and the iPhone market and the application market as a whole, the number of malicious applications, unfortunately, is increasing pretty drastically. Now, as I kind of touched upon, social media is also a big problem. 72% of employees use social media during the workday, according to research. I would venture to say that it's probably higher than that. So maybe I accidentally post something I wasn't supposed to. Maybe I'm intentionally posting something because I have a big work project or my coworkers are doing something fun, or just work in general. But maybe I really shouldn't have, and it might be private. There's also something called Facebook self-censorship. This is kind of terrifying, and I didn't know about this before. When you type something on Facebook and delete it, Facebook actually has the ability to track that, which might be used in data mining, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a little scary that, I might be angry with my boss and write something horrible, but obviously I'm not going to post it. But that data is actually out there somewhere. A couple more security risks associated with employee separation, either got fired or left the job. 50% of those separated employees still have corporate data on their devices. Even kind of more unfortunately, 40% of the 50% plan to use this data in their new jobs, and they don't even feel that this is bad. And also, as we're seeing kind of the rise of the Apple Watch, et cetera, we're seeing kind of these hugely connected devices such as Fitbit, whatever, with pretty much no security whatsoever. So there are kind of some moves in the MDM world to start managing the security risks associated with wearable devices. So as I mentioned, the rise of mobile device management really came from the desire of organizations to allow employees to bring their own devices, which, while not exposing themselves to the portfolio of risks associated with this. For many managers, endpoint security is the apex of concerns. This includes malware, phishing, identity theft, and, as might be expected given the context of this presentation, mobile device security. More than half of the workforce uses mobile devices in a work context, but only 40% of organizations have security measures in place. Kind of paradoxically, most organizations list mobile and network security as a primary concern. In 2014, survey respondents actually indicated that the BYOD movement is a primary cause of security concerns. And this is where I really think what we're seeing kind of people capitalizing upon this need. And I think this is how the mobile device management movement was kind of conceptualized and born. So when we talk about mobile device management, and when I first started thinking about it, it sounds pretty complicated. There's, billions of devices out there, and, how is one solution going to help us so much? So I actually spoke with a manager at AirWatch, which is a huge mobile device management provider, and then also with a gentleman who is a network administrator for the city of Alpharetta. So I kind of talked to them about, how does mobile device management really work? How do we make this kind of palatable to the end user? So it's pretty simple, actually. So an employee, when they're hired, they just download the mobile device management application to their device. And the mobile device management administration manages the device remotely. All of the organization's management, restrictions, visibility, and deployment tools are controlled from a central hosted portal. Basically, it's a website. So once the employee has downloaded the application, the company's IT department can gain access to the device, enable it, and secure it. They can upload, software updates, email updates, what have you. They can do all of this remotely, and it happens in the background. This is not something that says, you need to do this and it gets done. This is just happening kind of in the bowels, I guess, of the device. So even though this mobile device management solution is there and really has kind of the ability to do whatever we need to do to encrypt data, to wipe data as needed, respondents to the Network World Asia 2014 IT security survey indicated that mobile device management solutions were among the least utilized solutions to growing mobile device security concerns. So as I mentioned, company resources in mobile device management are controlled from a central hosted portal that comes in the form of a website. They can update management things, like let's say there might be different profiles. So I might be a brand new employee, so I don't have as much access as a director level person or CEO level. So you have different profiles embedded within one organization's mobile device management solution. Like I said, there's also restrictions associated with that confidentiality. Also, if we need to shoot out new applications, new access, et cetera, that can be done quickly, easily, and kind of without a blink of an eye. While this is happening, I think that it's also important to note that there's a separation between corporate and personal data. So the organization can't just come in your phone and look at your text messages. That's not something that happens. You kind of can think about it as two interfaces. There's a work interface and there's a personal interface. And that's managed at the MDM level. So for each individual employee as well, there's a corporate profile, and it's saved into the individual device settings. As I mentioned before, this allows IT administration to remove data as needed, upload applications, maybe change email access, and even if there is a separation with that employee, this will allow them to wipe data, or let's say this phone is lost, we can wipe the data, and that will really save the organization from the potential security threats associated, with potential separation, theft, loss, what have you. So now if we think back to the original kind of scenario that we spoke about, we think about how mobile device management really saved an organization from, kind of losing business via time and money and recovery. So we think about something called disaster recovery as a service. So this really is a real movement, and this is how companies are starting to back up their data kind of in a cloud-based way. Now, the first company that we talked about, I think that essentially this is a good little comic to think about, like disaster recovery. And everybody loves Dilbert, so I always need a smile later in the presentation. So, disaster recovery as a service. As I mentioned, from a mobile device management standpoint, remote workers who have lost access to devices and information can be quickly re-equipped with access to pertinent data, kind of job continuing information, which is possible due to the centralization of information. IT admin can just send information and commands to remote devices and restore organizational connectivity. So let's think about this. If there's a Samsung Galaxy Note 7 problem and I get a new phone, this can be quickly done. If there's a real natural disaster and my phone gets washed away in a flood, but I get a new one, I can quickly be re-equipped. And then server information can be backed up both domestically and internationally. As stated by one of the AirWatch managers, quote-unquote disaster-proof infrastructure must be hosted off-site. So what we're seeing in the research is that this growing number of mobile devices, because everybody has one, is growing into actually an exponentially growing disaster recovery solution, because all of this information is out there and it's all able to be recovered through mobile device management. Now, there are some limitations to the thought of disaster recovery as a service. While MDM solutions are great, and all that data is out there on employees' mobile devices, and employees can be restored to connectivity, they can be told where to go if they need to go to a remote location. There's a myriad of real benefits associated with it. There are also, some issues. MDM solutions should be paired with hosted software to increase disaster recovery benefits, such as Office 365 or Salesforce, basically cloud-based solutions that are going to give us the option for kind of more profound access to data. But what mobile device management solutions, basically disaster recovery as a service, offers is that disaster recovery efforts don't have to be done on a one-by-one basis. They don't have to be done manually. All of this can be done in a blanket fashion across the entire organization, and kind of with the click of a button. Now, kind of the reasoning behind mobile device management and the disaster recovery as a service movement is that standard disaster recovery solutions are pretty expensive, and they're pretty cumbersome. So for my organization, which is pretty small, we're not going to have a disaster recovery solution because it's simply too expensive for us. And that's the case with a lot of companies. If I'm a law firm or a small doctor's office, there's some real challenges associated with coming up with the capital to do a real disaster recovery solution. As such, approximately a third of organizations depend solely on on-site backups and or off-site tapes as their only means of disaster recovery. as MDM providers have kind of seen this, they've decided to integrate disaster recovery as a service into their portfolios. There's a whole slew of them, and for the most part, they're allowing companies to fully recover from any sort of disaster within 4 hours. Dell, which is obviously, a monster among men, promises full recovery for organizations in just a matter of minutes. This is a lot less expensive than traditional disaster recovery solutions, but it's also important to think about industry-specific regulations, HIPAA regulations, and how data can be moved as it's confidential. So kind of to shut everything out, what we found is that the rapid changes in networking capabilities have given the rise to actually changes in the workplace. Cloud computing and smartphones have allowed organizations to kind of disperse their operations outside of concrete walls. Employees are able to bring their own devices to work, and companies and employees themselves are also benefiting. Though this is a really great thing on the face of it, we're seeing, security threats that are exponentially growing, and mobile device management has grown as an industry because of the need to address those concerns. They're beginning to evolve into disaster recovery and business continuity resources. They allow for pertinent information to be shared, and they allow remote access to programs that are going to allow people to do their day in, day out work, even in the event of a disaster. The world of technology is never going to stop growing at this point. And what we're going to have to do as kind of a society is evolve and understand that the way that individuals and businesses are interacting with each other and with new technologies and with new concepts is going to keep changing. Kind of as a closing point, I think that, as technology becomes more integral to how we do our work, we're going to continue to see the rise of security risks. But we're also going to see, a portfolio of rewards, and effectively navigating, the balance between those risks and rewards is going to continue to become more and more paramount in the successful adoption of and adaptation to emerging technologies in the workplace. And